Hello and welcome to another transfer special on the Indie Football Podcast. Today I am joined by my very good friend Ritin, who's a big fan of today's guest. Now the question is, who is today's guest? Today's guest is the one who has been hogging all the headlines in this transfer market. He is none other than Ben Jacobs. Yes guys, people have been comparing him to David Ornstein, Fabrizio Romano, but for us today, he is the GOAT. So yes, in the next 10 seconds, we are going to welcome Ben Jacobs on the Indie Football Podcast to talk all about Liverpool and all the transfer rumors in the transfer market. Just as a wild guess, and we are not going to put it out that Ben Jacobs said this player is going to come in. You're right. Welcome to the Indie Football Podcast, mate.
Great to be here.
And we have waited quite a bit to have you here. So how are you today?
Everything is good. Busy times, of course, into the last 4 or 5 weeks of the window. So there's a lot of deals happening and Liverpool are going to be busy.
Absolutely, man. So with all due respect to your time, we are going to jump straight into action. So first of all, the very obvious question of Alexander Isak. And a lot has been said, a lot has been done. You for yourself have been on top of the news, and the recent what we have heard is that Newcastle are maybe trying to get a replacement for him, maybe Benjamin Sesko, which at the time of recording is still very much, a deal that could happen. And other than that, of course, Liverpool, as you had mentioned, might bid only when there is a clear for sale stance from Newcastle. So what is the latest on that, and what do you see happening realistically?
Yeah, it's a complicated situation because, as you say, Liverpool don't want to bid blindly. They don't want to keep placing offers when Newcastle United are unlikely to engage with them until they find a replacement. The Benjamin Sesko situation is open at the time we're live. It could move very quickly. Maybe by the time people watch this, we'll know his next destination. But right now, there's 2 bids, one from Newcastle, one from Liverpool. The feeling is that if Manchester United go on to agree a package with Leipzig, that Sesko is leaning in that direction. But Newcastle are also pushing very hard. And coming back to Liverpool, if Benjamin Sesko joins Newcastle, then they are effectively spending some of that Alexander Isak money, so the door will be open. If Benjamin Sesko ends up at Man United, and again, we may know the answer to this in a matter of minutes or hours, so we might be out of date. People watching may know more than we do at this time. But if Sesko goes to Manchester United, Newcastle are going to have to bring in likely 2 replacements, but certainly one big name. So maybe Yohan Wissa plus another attacker, maybe Ollie Watkins, maybe Nicholas Jackson. These are all targets. We'll have to wait and see how things develop. But basically, Liverpool are not getting involved in the politics. Liverpool are not getting involved in bidding without confidence. Liverpool are not inclined to bid at all until the right opportunity presents itself in the window. And that means being patient. But make no mistake, there's a big difference between pulling out, which they haven't done, and not bidding. So they're not bidding because they feel they're wasting their time bidding until Newcastle find a replacement. If Newcastle get in a big name, Liverpool will still be there. So this Alexander Isak situation is not over. It's just a case of you need to time your bid with the best possible chance of success. And that is why at the moment, Liverpool is simply waiting.
Fair enough. My friend Ritin here is a big fan of yours, and although he's not a regular on the Indie Football Podcast, he was so excited that I was like, come on man, just join it. So Ritin, the stage is yours. You wanted to ask Ben some questions.
Hello Ben, actually I'm a big fan of yours. Like I've been following your tweets like day in and day out.
Thank you, that's kind of you.
Like seriously, like I want to know everything about Isak Situation, so I follow about 300 to 400 times. I refresh Twitter because seriously, you have been a great representative of this situation, in my opinion. But I want to ask about Liverpool the defensive problems, because in the preseason we have seen there are many defensive lapses. So, we are linked to Guehi, I guess. But I guess people are saying that Guehi is not that good enough for Liverpool. So, any other profile I want to ask with which we are linked?
Yeah, I think there's a few defensive profiles. I've said many times that Liverpool and Marc Guehi will only develop if the price drops. So beginning of the window, it was 50, middle of the window, it was 45. Now some say it's as low as 40, but Liverpool won't bid for Marc Guehi unless the price drops even further. And that type of deal might actually come a little bit later in the window as a result, because ultimately you're dealing with Crystal Palace, who may feel right now they can stick to their valuation. But what helps Liverpool and Marc Guehi, and Newcastle are interested in Marc Guehi, and Tottenham have looked at Marc Guehi, is the fact that he's got 1 year left on his deal. So Crystal Palace don't want Marc Guehi to stay. They want him to be sold now. Otherwise, they risk making nothing, because in likelihood, Guehi will not sign a new deal at Crystal Palace. So that's point number one. Point number two is, even if you agree a deal with Palace and get the price you're looking for, Marc Guehi may say no, because actually staying at Palace for him and running down his contract serves two purposes. The first, he plays every week in a World Cup year, and the second, as a free transfer, he's in a strong position to pick his next club. So this is why it's a complicated situation, and Liverpool haven't bid, because the price isn't right, and naturally they need to give the player the guarantees of game time. And as long as Ibrahima Konate is at the football club along with Virgil van Dijk, can Liverpool give Marc Guehi enough game time? The last point to make is that this hasn't been about Marc Guehi all summer. He's kind of the exception to the rule within this recruitment model. So if they move for him, it's because the deal is too good to turn down. If they don't, it's actually because he's a year too old. And Richard Hughes, the sporting director, has been looking at profiles between 18 and 22. And Marc Guehi is 23. So in an ideal world, they've tried to find a younger defensive profile. And if you go back a few windows, that was Lenny Yoro, but he went to Man United. That was Levi Colwell, but he was not available. That was Jorel Hato, but he converted to a left back, and Liverpool signed Milos Kerkez. So then they ended their interest. And also on their radar is Giovanni Leone, a young defender at Parma. And another name to mention is Charlie Cresswell, a young defender at Toulouse, who used to play for Leeds United. So every single one of these footballers has one thing in common, that they're all between 18 years of age and 22. Marc Guehi's 23. I know it doesn't seem like a big difference, but that's where they've capped the line. So don't be surprised if Guehi doesn't agree to have maybe less minutes, or if Crystal Palace don't agree to drop their price further. Don't be surprised if Liverpool actually don't enter the race for Marc Guehi and they go for Giovanni Leone or another young defender, because that was always their original plan.
Makes sense. I think that's a fair enough evaluation of things. And thank you for telling us about the situations regarding Isak and Marc Guehi. But now I want to move on to another segment. One thing which I really liked about every stream that you have been on, Ben, is the immense and the well-deserved respect to Diogo Jota, while especially talking about the forward signings. I think I have been mentioning it with people across our community groups, across India and others also. And I think I was also having a talk with Paul Gost also about it a few days back, about how respectful everyone's being and how it's well deserved at this point of time for us to respect the whole situation. So like, if I do want to talk about a left wing signing, say instead of a replacement for Luis Diaz, we are being linked with Rodrygo, we are being linked with Malik Fofana here in the market. So do you feel that that is something which Liverpool could do in addition to Alexander Isak, considering there's going to be a lot of financial layout that they would have to put to get the deal in? And because what we can see is that if Alexander Isak does come in, we have 4 senior forwards, considering Chiesa and Núñez go out. So do you think that happens?
Yeah, I think the situation obviously with Diogo Jota is horribly tragic and sad. And as ever, my thoughts are with the Liverpool community and his family, and of course his brother, Andre Silva, who passed away too. And it's very difficult when you're covering Liverpool to think about the absence of Jota. And I think the outpouring at Anfield and all of the plans going forwards, there was a commemorative programme for the friendly against Athletic Bilbao. No doubt the 20th minute is going to be special and memorable and sad and moving throughout the entire season. The kits are going to have reference to Diogo, Jota, and many, many other tributes. And as you kind of alluded to in your question, it's very difficult as a journalist to think of this in any other terms than how can we be the most respectful to the Diogo Jota family and the football club.
Absolutely.
So when we
Absolutely.
understand how Liverpool may move in the market, we almost have to omit the Jota factor, even though perhaps recruitment teams are thinking about what they need to do in light of Jota, in light of Diaz, in light of Darwin Núñez, who's expected to leave as well. But it's not a part of the puzzle I have, because I prefer to commemorate Jota in his memory and think about the fact that the football club and his family are in grieving. And we may not know until the end of the window what kind of decision-making process Liverpool have got in light of that. But if you remove that, what we know is that Luis Diaz has gone to Bayern. Darwin Núñez might go to Al Hilal. Milan are interested in him too. And I think it's fair to say that Liverpool always knew they wanted Hugo Ekitike and, in an ideal world, Alexander Isak. So there's your two strikers. If they don't get Alexander Isak, it becomes a bit more interesting. Do they put that money on a left-wing specialist, or do they stick with what they've got? And my feeling at the moment is that there will not be a box office left winger, even though it's true that there's some appreciation for Rodrygo. It's just too expensive of a deal. And he may not even leave Real Madrid, because perhaps the player will end up being happy to fight for his place. But I think the finances of the Rodrygo deal, because Liverpool are not about numbers, they're about value. And there's a key difference here. So they're happy to put down 120, 130 maybe on Alexander Isak, because they think that's value. But the challenge with Rodrygo is you don't necessarily get value for money on the wage, on the taxes, on the agent fees, and on the 90 million euros that Real Madrid are asking for. So I think they'll feel Rodrygo is not necessarily one where there's value for money, but with Isak, they'll feel it's money well spent, even though, of course, overall, Isak will be a more expensive deal than Rodrygo. And that's why I make the difference between the two, because football fans sometimes get too focused on what the actual number is. And they say, well, if this player is cheaper than that player, how are we not moving? But Liverpool are all about value and a return on investment on and off the field over the length of the contract. And that's why I think Rodrygo is not one that I'm sensing at this stage is particularly likely for Liverpool. Malik Fofana is an interesting one, because you have a scenario where Everton are actually pushing the other half of Merseyside, and yet the player in an ideal world would want Champions League football. So I can see a scenario where, because Diaz has gone to Bayern, which was not the original plan, maybe they put their efforts on Alexander Isak along with Ekitike, and they bring in a young and more budget and younger left-wing option. But there is a scenario where no new left winger arrives, and actually Alexander Isak comes in. He's your main number 9. Hugo Ekitike is fighting to be the number 9. They don't switch to a 4-4-2, and actually Ekitike gets filtered out to the left-hand side, and Alexander Isak leads the line. So Ekitike might be a hybrid, a bit like Armand Marmouche for Haaland cover and for Kevin De Bruyne replacement. You might find that Hugo Ekitike, the plan is to have him wide left at times, centre forward at times, and then if Isak arrives, the two can coexist without a change in formation.
Fair enough. Ritin, you had some questions about the team's chemistry that you were mentioning.
When I want to ask, like, as we saw yesterday's game, preseason game, that Hugo Ekitike and even Wirtz Gapco are playing with too much fluidity. So can we see Dominic Szoboszlai playing little bit deeper and like Gravenberch
more regularly this season? Do you see that happening, Ben?
Yeah, I think it's possible. I mean, I was always sort of under the impression that Szoboszlai was signed as either a 6 or an 8 and had that kind of versatility within his locker. And as a consequence, the fact that he can take up more than one role definitely allows Liverpool different options. We know that they never came back in for Martin Zubimendi at 6. They could have done, because they'd done a fair amount of legwork. By not doing so, he obviously went to Arsenal without any competition. But that tells you that Liverpool are happy with their 6 options at the moment. They haven't felt the need to go in the market and add another midfielder. So have they got that type of midfielder from within? Absolutely. I think Ryan Gravenberch and Dominic Szoboszlai have both been fantastic signings for Liverpool. And one of the reasons why is because they're versatile, they're tactically adaptable, they're intelligent, they've got good movement off the ball. When they're asked to play a specific role, they can rein it in and be quite rigid. When they're given a bit more freedom, particularly Szoboszlai, they show that they can burst forwards and score goals. So these are welcome headaches to have for Arne Slot. But the clue is not in Szoboszlai. The clue is in the fact that they didn't enter a race for another important number 6. They didn't put big money and budget in a window where they've had money on Martin Zubimendi. I have absolutely no doubt if Liverpool wanted Martin Zubimendi, they could have done it, financially speaking, because ultimately they're having this type of window where they've got a lot of PSR headroom and they're showing that they can do a high volume of signings. Wirtz has come in, they're not done. Hugo Ekitike came in, they're not done. There's still a big burning hole of a British transfer record if they want Alexander Isak. So if they felt that Martin Zubimendi was a player they needed, and if they felt a defined 6 had to come in the football club, they'd have gone head-to-head with Arsenal, and there might have even been some confidence because the player actually at one point was very close 12 months ago to joining Liverpool, but they didn't. Right. And I think that's a clear indication that they feel they've got enough options at number 6 from within.
Fair enough. Ben, with all due respect to your time, we know that, you are very much on a time crunch. So I think we have got 7-8 minutes left, which I would take, as just for some safety for time. When we talk about outgoings here, now, of course, we have read your tweet about Bajčetić being close to a move. Of course, his first part of his medical was done, if I'm not wrong. So now there have been talks about Elliott. There have been talks about Ben Doak. Our very good friend David Lynch reported today that there are offers for him in the market, and clubs are looking at him. And there are talks about Chiesa too. Núñez, of course, is being linked with Saudi and AC Milan. So where do you see these players shipping out? Do you see all of them getting shipped out? Do you feel that there's a chance Slot might retain one of the forwards, or he might retain Harvey Elliott, considering he has been immense in preseason at times? How do you see this all coming along?
Yeah, I think with Harvey Elliott, he was also outstanding at the under-21 Euros too. So it's win-win for Liverpool. If they keep him, they're comfortable with that. If they sell him, they're going to get a much higher number. I know West Ham had made an inquiry a little earlier in the window. Fulham, another club that really like Harvey Elliott. A few German teams are chasing his signature too. So Elliott's not going to be short of options, but it has to be right for the player. And if he ended up staying, I think Liverpool would also be very calm about that situation. Tyler Morton is off to Lyon, so that's another interesting one to watch. And I think we'll see a situation where that is official in the next 24 or 48 hours, because as far as I understand, that deal is 100% done. So keep an eye on your social feeds, probably in the next minutes or hours. Because my expectation is Tyler Morton.
Sorry, I meant Tyler Morton only. I might have said Bajčetić by mistake.
So yeah, I think that one's done. And then obviously we need to now understand a few other outgoings that we're going to see over the course of the coming hours or days. The main ones are going to be Chiesa, as you say, who's weighing up his options. I think an exit is likely, but it may happen a little bit later in the window due to the fact that maybe there is a player desire to take his time. You have Kostas Tsimikas, who's only got 2 years left on his contract. Now might be a good time for Liverpool to consider a sale. You may remember earlier in the window, Andy Robertson was being linked with a move to Atletico Madrid. That might have shut the door to Tsimikas going, but now it looks like Robinson's going to stay. And I think Liverpool will be open to offers for Tsimikas. Lots of clubs have shown interest in Ben Doak, but Liverpool don't actually have any offers yet. So we'll have to wait and see how things emerge there. There is a willingness for Liverpool to sell. Everton had actually discussed a sensational move across Merseyside, but it's not led to anything at this stage. So it's a wait-and-see situation with Doak. Liverpool are braced for offers, but they don't have any at the moment. I think James McConnell and Lucas Stevenson will both go out on loan. And maybe one or two of those clubs that have made inquiries over only a semi-permanent loan might actually decide to try and test Liverpool and see whether a permanent exit is possible. So those could be loaned, but they could be sold permanently as well. So we're going to see a fair amount of movement. It's that time of the window where you would expect a flurry of outgoings. And I think Liverpool still have 4 or 5 players in and around their senior squad that they want to try and get out the door.
Okay, so before I ask the ultimate question, which is not related to transfers, one question I do want to ask you is, if as a footballing fan, and if as a footballing fan you had to name by your gut feeling, and I'm not saying it's any sort of a report, if you had to say the signings that would come in your view right from today by the end of the window for Liverpool, who would that be? Like, just as a wild guess, and we are not going to put it out that Ben Jacobs said this player is going to come in.
Yeah, I
wild
don't
guess.
deal in wild guesses because there's a fine line between giving an opinion and it getting misconstrued as reporting. So I come back to what I said before. We know the Isak situation isn't over. I can't give you an odds on it. I can't give you a prediction on it. All I can say is that if it gets to a second bid, my expectation is the deal gets done, simply because I don't sense that Liverpool are interested in even having another conversation with Newcastle United unless they're invited to come to the table. And if they're invited to come to the table, then it's pretty much the beginning of the end as far as his Newcastle career is concerned. So this is the key point now, not will Liverpool bid and not will it get done, but is the next step going to be Newcastle United effectively picking up the phone to Liverpool and saying, now we're prepared to do business? And if they are, then regardless of what the number is, regardless of what the deal looks like, regardless of how long it takes in the month of August or early September, that for me will be a snowball to Alexander Isak getting done. Because Liverpool's perspective is they don't want to get embroiled in this again. They don't want to place the second bid again unless they know this time around it's actually something that Newcastle are going to sanction. And that's because the first time they tried to test the water with a bid worth 110 million, it was shot down so quickly and so emphatically that Liverpool are now not in the business of trying to play any games here. They're basically saying their tactic is simple. You go, Newcastle, get your replacements, you deal with the player, you pacify the player just a few weeks before the beginning of the Premier League season. Once you're all aligned, if there's a deal there to be had, we're ready, we'll bid. We've told you already it's going to be a British transfer record. If it doesn't get to that point for whatever reason, then Liverpool will be back in future windows instead of this summer. And that's where we're kind of at. And then obviously from a defender's point of view, we can't rule out Marc Guehi, but the price will have to drop. But it wouldn't surprise me if they go for a younger kind of defender, because like I said earlier, that was always their plan. And then let's see if they had a left winger. I have no indication yet as to whether they will or won't move, but I'll obviously keep you posted. But I think it'll be a maximum of 3 senior players at this stage, very possibly a centre-back and a young one. And if not, let's see if they move for Marc Guehi. There's other competition too. Almost certainly another attacker in some capacity, with Isak being the priority, but they need some kind of encouragement first. And then if they got Isak, perhaps the knock-on effect of that is still a younger left-wing profile between now and the end of the window. But I don't think it'll be more than a maximum of 3 incomings between now and when the summer window shuts.
Fair enough. Ritin, do you want to ask anything else before we end this recording? Because
no,
keeping respect to Ben's
I
time.
want to ask his opinion on Rio, because he has been a great prospect, and even in preseason he has performed really well. So, do you see him in this starting Premier League games or Carabao Cup games or FA Cup games?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, he's only 16 years of age, so I think Liverpool's perspective is to try and be very cautious and protect the player. And we know that the whole point of Liverpool's model is transition, where the players that you'll ultimately replace are still there, which is why Kirkus is there, but they want to keep Andy Robinson at the moment, which is why they're looking for a defender. Virgil van Dijk's still at the club. Eventually, they'll look for a right-sided attacker. Salah is still at the club. You have Mamadishvili coming in, but Alisson is still at the club. So this isn't about chucking a player in at the deep end. And I know when they were looking at Lenny Yoro before he went to Man United, another player in the same category as Rio, who's seen as a generational talent, they were very much saying to Yoro, who'd played a lot more football than Rio, that you're not just going to get thrown in. You're not going to get instant opportunities because your pathway needs more time. And that's not Liverpool denying an opportunity. That's Liverpool saying, how do we get the best player out of you? We protect you. We phase you in. We don't give you the pressure of a price tag. We don't give you the pressure of every single day starting Premier League football, even if the player feels ready. And remember, Rio is 16 years of age. So this is the challenge at the moment. So what I can tell you is they think this kid is something special. To get him away from Chelsea was seen as a massive coup. And from what we've seen so far, he is outstanding in pre-season, right-footed, predominantly operating off the left flank. So naturally, people will say, wait a minute, Luis Diaz is gone. We need a right footer who's on the left flank. And it may be that if they don't go down the line of the young left winger that I speak to, they stick with their teenage left-sided playmaker and they say, great, let's give him an opportunity in and around the Luis Diaz role. So that's one to watch, but I certainly don't expect them to be giving him starts immediately. I certainly don't expect them to be throwing him in without any protection or pathway into the deep end. But I do expect him to get minutes and opportunities. And I don't think that will solely be reserved to a League Cup. I think you're talking about FA Cup. I think you're talking about Champions League. If you get a scenario in the league phase where they've already qualified with a game or two to go, or they get a fixture where they're 3 or 4-0 up and maybe he's on the bench and you say, okay, let's just give him 15, 20 minutes. And I think there will be scenarios if Liverpool are fighting on all fronts where he gets Premier League opportunities as well. But I'm not expecting it to be overnight or immediate. But one thing I can tell you is that Liverpool are very excited about the prospect of this kid. So I don't think he's going to go silent after pre-season and just not appear. And let's sort of see that first consideration as well as to whether they decide he's part of the first team squad and they keep him for a season and they continue to push him at academy level as well. So they phase him in every so often, but they keep him in that sort of under 23s, or whether actually they feel that maybe there's more of a long-term pathway where he needs minutes away from Liverpool too. Don't think that will come immediately, but you might find there's actually a staggered first team opportunities into in a year's time, alone somewhere, then back again, regular first team starter. It'll all just depend on the player's development, but I'm pretty excited to see how he develops because I think every single person at Liverpool Football Club think this kid could become a generational talent.
Right. Thank you so much, Ben. I think it's been an absolute honor having you. And I am 25 now, but for the 6-year-old in me, having people like James Pierce, Paul Gost, yourself, and Peter Moore, like when I look at the podcast, when I see at the people you have had, it's absolutely brilliant and, a dream come true for me. So I think I dream twice when I sleep at night. And yeah, thank you so much for coming in. We won't take much of your time since you have been kind enough to be here for us. Do drop in our WhatsApp business number if you can, because whenever we put this out, we'll just share it with you and we won't disturb you for frivolous reasons. Of course, we would want to have you again soon with us whenever it's possible for you. And thank you so much for taking out the time. We look forward to having you again with us. So thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Real pleasure coming on. Good luck to Liverpool for the new season and keep up the good work. We'll speak soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much, man. Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Much appreciated. Keep up the good work. Keep in touch and just drop me an email if you need anything.
Sure. Definitely.
And we'll speak soon. I look forward to it. All the best, guys.
Bye.
Okay.
See you later. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.